Shalom from Israel. My name's James McKeever. I'm an Israeli tour guide, and I'm making this video from outside my home by the shores of the Sea of Galilee. First off, to all those people who have been messaging me during this current war with Gaza, myself, my family, and my community are relatively safe. There's been an increase in missiles coming out of Syria. We've heard a lot of booms nearby, but no sirens so far within the kibbutz itself. But the main purpose of this video is to talk about the history of Gaza, Jewish and Arab, and it's very much in response to some of these protests that I've seen all over in the major cities of the world, and also for those people who are pro-Israel, who just want to know more about the history of this land and the context of how we came to get here. So, I should start with saying that Jews have been living in Gaza for over 2,000 years. Going back to the 2nd century BC, that's the Hashmonean period, the time of the Hanukkah story, for those of you who are familiar with it. And we have ancient synagogues that have been excavated in Gaza. And we have the mosaics from those synagogues in museums today. So it's a place of ancient Jewish civilization. However, I'm going to wind the clock forward because we just don't have enough time to go through 2,000 years of history. I'm going to wind the clock forward to 1929, when Arab riots in several major cities, including Gaza, murdered Jewish civilians living there and forced the others to leave. This is incredibly relevant to what's going on today, because these people were being killed because they were Jewish, not because they were Israeli. This puts a context into it. The Jewish state of Israel does not exist until 1948. So these people were being killed for being Jewish in 1929. And this is something that continues very much up until the modern day with regards to the history of Gaza. Fast forward 18 years and we come to 1947, when the UN make Resolution 181 and declare what we today would call a two-state solution. That basically means that there will be a Jewish state and an Arab state in the land of what we today call Israel, or Palestine if you like, and Jerusalem would be international. The Jews said yes, the Arabs said no, and first a civil and then an international war ensued. This is what we as Israelis call the War of Independence, and what the Arabs refer to as the Nakba, or the Great Catastrophe. Because obviously in this war, the Jews won. We managed to create a state in our homeland for the first time in 2,000 years. We could come home and be independent in our homeland. And it was one of the happiest and most important points in Jewish history. However, for the Arabs, they said no to the two-state solution. And as a result of the war, they lost land. And this is something that we'll find, again, repeating itself throughout the history, that when the Arabs have embarked on a war of extermination of the Jewish people, they have lost land, and then later basically used it as an excuse to declare another war. And this process has repeated itself several times. So, in 1948, the State of Israel is created, end of the War of Independence, and the Arabs have lost land, and the Egyptians, not the Palestinians, the Egyptians control the area that is today called the Gaza Strip. The Jordanians control the area of the West Bank. That's a whole different video. But there is no Palestinian state existing in the West Bank, because Palestinian national identity as we know it today just didn't exist really back then. It was only galvanized in the way that we would recognize it today in the 1960s. So the Egyptians control the West Bank, and time continues. The Egyptians control the Gaza Strip, Jordanians the West Bank, and history continues. And in 1967, the Egyptians, the Jordanians, and the Syrians embark on another war of extermination of the Jewish people in the land of Israel. And they lost in what can only be called a miraculous victory for the state of Israel. And in this war, we took various territories, including the Gaza Strip and the Sinai Peninsula, which was taken from the Egyptians. When we made peace with Egypt in the process beginning in 1974, we returned the Sinai Peninsula, which is rich in oil. We also dismantled Jewish villages that were now existing in the Sinai Peninsula, brought those people back into Israel proper. And this began that paradigm of land for peace, which everyone is so familiar with today, and many people consider to be the way forward to peace between the Jews and Arabs inside Israel. And so this makes it a kind of turning point. However, the Egyptians did not want Gaza. So Gaza stays under Israeli control, and we have Jews living there, particularly around the area of Gush Katif. We have in that area schools, hospitals, thriving agriculture. There are also beautiful beaches in Gaza. There is a lot going on there. It's an area with a lot of potential, both for tourism and agriculture. However, whilst we have this Jewish population thriving, we also have a basically open border between the Gaza Strip and Israel. Thousands of people commuting every single day from Gaza into Israel and vice versa. And this commuting actually continued, sometimes in larger, sometimes in lesser numbers. But up until the current war, we had people commuting from Gaza into Israel, even when rockets were coming out of Gaza into Israel. But that's moving forward too fast. So we're just after 1967, and we have Jews living in Gaza alongside Arabs and a thriving Jewish community. Now, the first time any sort of hard border, by that time I mean a fence or wall or any sort of barrier, is put between Gaza and Israel is in 1994. And this is in response to terror attacks and weapons being used in terror attacks coming out of Gaza and being used to slaughter Israeli civilians. And so the Israeli government and army decided to put a fence around the Israeli part of the Gazan border. I say the Israeli part because there is also a border with Egypt. And despite this border is purely, or this fence is purely to make checkpoints in order for us to be able to check vehicles and people to see who and what is coming into Israel in order to secure the safety of Israeli civilians. However, again, thousands of people are still commuting across this border every day. And this continues up until 2005. And this is where we have a huge turning point. Because in 2005, Ariel Sharon, an Israeli prime minister with a prestigious military career, he's kind of known as a tough guy, and he dismantles 3 settlements in the West Bank, which many Israelis don't even know, but he sends in the Israeli army to, if necessary, use force to remove the Jewish population from Gaza. We're talking about roughly 9,000 people. This was a hugely traumatic moment in Israeli history, because for the first time we are free in our homeland, we have an army to protect us, but that army is sent in to remove Jews from their homes. But we did it in order for peace with the Arabs, to try this land for peace paradigm again. And this is what we do. By the way, 9,000 people might not sound like a lot, but it's 0.01% of our population. To put that in American terms, we're talking about 320,000 people. 320,000 people. That's roughly the population of Orlando, Florida. Can you imagine the American military being sent in to remove the entire population of Orlando, Florida, in order for peace? Not just peace, peace with an enemy you've been fighting for decades. Let's say the Taliban. It just wouldn't fly. But it's something that we did here in Israel. And in Gaza, there were democratic elections for the first time, and the people of Gaza elected Hamas. The first thing Hamas did was start to murder all the political opposition, and the Israeli army actually went in to save some of the Palestinian Authority leadership in Gaza and bring them to safety in the West Bank. But if we just put a pin in it for a second, please realize at this point, we have a democratically elected government in the Gaza Strip. All Jewish presence and military has been removed from the Gaza Strip. This is a golden opportunity for peace. Not only could we be tolerating one another, there is an opportunity, there's all that infrastructure for agriculture, for tourism with those beaches. There could be a beautiful coexistence and a thriving economy, bringing a higher standard of life to the Arabs living in Gaza, living alongside their Israeli neighbors. But this is not what we got. What we got was Hamas. And I encourage anybody watching this video to read the Hamas Charter. Understand who these people are and what they want. They explicitly say that part of their purpose is a destruction of the state of Israel and the Jewish people. They also reject diplomacy as a method to achieve this. They say jihad, armed struggle, is the only way in which they accept for the state of Israel and the Jewish people living within it to be destroyed. This is a genocidal organization who wishes to murder what is now about 7 million Jewish people living in the land of Israel. And they reject all peaceful means of negotiation. The only method they are willing to use is violence. And from that point on, we got rockets flying into Israel from the civilian areas of the Gaza Strip. By the way, it took until 2008 for the first Israeli military incursion into the Gaza Strip in response to missiles coming over for years. What country would accept missiles coming over for 1 week, 1 month, let alone years before responding? I can't think of another country, only Israel. Why? Because we know that any military incursion into the Gaza Strip is going to involve civilian casualties. By the way, any military operation, pretty much anywhere, ever, has involved civilian casualties. It's a tragedy, but it's a fact of war. Anyway, so Gaza control the Gaza Strip, and they are using it as a launch site for rocket attacks, not at Israeli military targets, at Israeli civilians. And this is the reality. Every 4 years or so, Hamas rearm, fire missiles into Israel until our army responds. We have a ceasefire, and we wait another 4 years or so for the next round. And this was the reality. Many Israelis, by the way, have a lot of criticism of our government for allowing this to happen. People in the south living in that kind of a reality. But that all changed on the 7th of October with this pogrom, this slaughter that happened. 1,500 Israelis, another 240 odd kidnapped, 1,500 dead. This broke this 4-year cycle. This was a price that Israel's government, at least, was not willing for its population to suffer. Again, how could anybody live in a place knowing that armed terrorists could come in and slaughter their families in their home? This is a reality that people cannot deal with. We had a ceasefire on the 6th of October. We cannot return to the reality of the 6th of October knowing that the 7th of October could happen again. And this is why the Israeli army has been forced to go into the Gaza Strip. For those people who are protesting Israel's actions right now, I would say there seems to be this rather morbid calculus, this mathematics of deaths, 1,500 versus 6,000, and that because of that, that there has to be a ceasefire because there is an inequality in the numbers here. But what we're talking about is not what Israel is looking for is not an equality of casualties. It's looking for a peaceful border. It needs, as a responsibility of a state, to secure the life of its citizens. If Hamas would stop attacking Israel, there would be peace tomorrow. If Israel would lay down its weapons, the 7th of September and worse would happen, 7th of October and worse would happen again. So this is the reality we find ourselves in. There are accusations of genocide, of ethnic cleansing, and all sorts of things like this, which I'll actually address. I'll kind of debunk some of these falsehoods in a future video. But the only parts of this land which have been ethnically cleansed are the areas of Israel that are under control of Hamas and the Palestinian Authority. They are free of Jews. Israel has one-fifth of its population, 20% are Arabs. There is no ethnic cleansing going on here, except in the areas controlled by the Arabs, where they have been ethnically cleansed of Jews. There is no genocide going on here. The Arab population has grown and grown and grown since the creation of the Jewish state. The death of the Arabs in the Gaza Strip has been caused by Hamas. It may be the Israeli military that is going in and physically causing the deaths, but this is in response to attacks on Israeli civilians and the necessity of the Israeli army and government to defend those civilians from such atrocities happening again. So we're dealing with a very dark topic, and I think that's enough of it for today. If you would like more information about what's going on here in Israel, or if because you cannot come to Israel, you would like to be guided here online, I do virtual tours using a 360 camera footage where I guide you through the sites of Israel on a live screen share and in an interactive guiding section. You can check that out on my website. It will be in the description below. And please share this video, subscribe to my YouTube channel if you would like to hear more, and I hope to catch you in the next video. Shalom from Israel. Bye.